Hello, welcome to Bold Women Lawyers Spotlight. Today we're talking about all things financial and related to money, which is a great topic for business owners. We have a wonderful guest with us today, Leah Hadley. I'm going to tell you about Leah in a minute. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Sharon Christie. I'm founder and CEO of Bold Women Lawyers. I am a lawyer. I was in private practice for many years as a partner in a small law firm. And then I had my own solo firm for 16 years. I merged that with another law firm so that I could launch Bold Women Lawyers, where I am a business strategist and business coach for lawyers in solo and small firm practices. One of the issues that came up for me all the time, and I know is coming up for you all, is the finances, the financial side of the business, and really being able to understand that for ourselves, as well as in certain situations for our clients. So we have the perfect guest here today, Leah Hadley. Now, let me tell you about her. Leah has had a lot of challenging financial times herself, becoming a parent of 3 overnight, which is amazing, getting divorced, losing her job, just to name a few of her financial challenges. And these have been the times when her ability to find appropriate resources and to do careful financial planning was critical to her survival and her peace of mind. She is a best-selling author, an accredited financial counselor, and a certified divorce financial analyst, which we're going to talk about in a minute. She's the founder of Great Lakes Investment Management and Great Lakes Divorce Financial Solutions. So she runs 2 businesses. So this lady knows what she's talking about. She uses all of her knowledge and her more than 15 years of experience to help clients make financial decisions that are wise so that they feel comfortable in their financial futures. Leah, welcome. I'm really so glad to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much, Sharon. It's really my pleasure.
Well, now we want to jump right in. I do. You have 2 companies, and I want to know all about both of them. So, can we start with Divorce Financial Solutions? Tell us
Absolutely.
what that is, and what was the genesis of you deciding to start that company?
Yeah, absolutely. So I worked many years ago as a financial advisor for a very large firm. And one of the things that I found happened frequently was that people would go through a divorce, and then following their divorce, especially women, would just blow through their assets. And the reason being is because some of the decisions that they made throughout the divorce process were not in their best interest from a financial standpoint long term. So they may have served a short term need, but they didn't necessarily do the planning that they needed to do to recognize that some of these decisions are really going to throw them off course for a long period after the divorce. And that was really frustrating to me. But within the context of that job, I wasn't able to provide the kind of divorce financial planning services that I think is so critical to making those sound decisions during the divorce process.
So, can you give us just an example or 2 of the kinds of decisions you're talking about?
Yeah, I'll tell you the 2 most common big financial mistakes that I see are one, staying in a house that you can't afford. So a lot of times people come from a very good place. A lot of times people have children. They want stability for their kids. They don't want their kids to have to move. They're already experiencing a transition within their family.
Yeah.
And so I understand where it's coming from, but sometimes people truly just cannot afford to stay in the family home. So that's probably first and foremost the most common that I see. But that's very closely followed by potentially an even larger financial mistake around not understanding pensions. So if there is a pension involved in your divorce, not necessarily understanding the value of that pension, and potentially, and the 2 are often interrelated, giving up an interest in a pension in order to be able to stay in a house when sometimes that pension was much more valuable.
Interesting you would say that. I had a conversation recently with a friend of mine who is a lawyer, and he mentioned that that was something that he got tripped up on related to his divorce. So it's not just women; sometimes it's men too. Yeah.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's absolutely attorneys too, right? So
Mhm.
we don't just serve the end client directly. A lot of times we're hired by attorneys to provide counsel directly to them and helping them understand the financials of a case so that way they can advise their client to make good decisions.
So with divorce financial solutions, who are your clients? Is it the lawyers? Is it people going through divorce? Is it both? How does that work?
Yeah, it could be either or. Sometimes people are hiring an attorney that may not be financially savvy, and there may be some complexity to their finances, and we could support that attorney in either strategy or even just simple things like figuring out what do we need to ask for in discovery, right? It might be looking over the financials and helping to point things out that may or may not be real familiar with the for the attorney, or maybe valuing certain assets. We don't do business valuations, but we do pension valuations. It might be looking at, retirement accounts, understanding the difference in how things get taxed, things like that. So a variety of different ways that we support attorneys directly. But sometimes we're hired on by clients, especially those who might be going through mediation and may need to prepare and understand what their options are from a financial standpoint. So sometimes we get hired on for that. Sometimes we get hired by both parties to have somebody neutral looking from a financial standpoint. How do we maximize the marital estate? I would say that is most commonly happening with those who either are of retirement age or approaching retirement age, and making sure that both parties are going to still be able to retire as planned.
Interesting. And one of the things you said, Leah, that I want to go back to for a minute is, the lawyers may not be financially savvy. They're great when it comes to divorce law and how the legal side of things works. But, we lawyers, sometimes hard to admit, are not expert in every aspect of the cases that we deal with. So it seems to me like it is a great service to bring in someone who can address the financial side if the lawyer feels that he or she it is not that's not their strong suit, or it could be that it's a much more complex um, divorce with regard to the size and valuation of assets that really does justify bringing in some help to make sure you fully understand when you make certain decisions what the real outcome of that is going to be. Yeah.
Exactly. And you're exactly right, Sharon. It's about knowing our own strengths and weaknesses, knowing our own limitations, right? There are some very financially savvy attorneys out there
Mhm.
who, could do some of this stuff in their sleep, right? And then there are others who, especially who handle family law, might be more interested or more focused on some of the parenting issues and things like that, where this is a service that's very complementary in supporting, them on the cases that they might have a little bit more financial need.
Well, and it's interesting because when you talked about like one of the big issues, mistakes, is staying in the family home. And I certainly know that there are emotional ties um, to that whole issue of want to stay here. I want the kids to be here, or you're so hurt by the divorce proceedings, like you get your back up, and I understand that. I am not leaving this house. I am not leaving this house. And yet, that may be the worst financial decision you could make. But for an attorney, you have so much else to deal with, particularly if there's parenting and custody issues going on, that to be able to put that part of the emotional aspect of the case onto someone else, not that you're dealing with the emotions, but you're the independent person coming in to say, look, I'm going to look at this for you from a purely financial point of view. Doesn't involve the emotions, but you have to protect yourself financially. I would think that for many lawyers that would be a huge help, just to try to offload that portion of all the other emotional
Well, it's a
things
good
they
point,
could
right?
deal with.
And sometimes even like some attorneys do see the numbers and say like, hey, it's not in your best interest to stay in the house, right? but sometimes you need another person to say it in order for it to be heard, right?
Sure.
And so it is something where we really do look at the financial implications of things and do take the emotion out of it. And sometimes just not being involved with everything else going on with the case allows us to do that in a cleaner way.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. That can be, I know, just very difficult conversations that lawyers have to have with clients. And you're right, to hear it not just from the lawyer, but from an independent party can help move progress forward, hopefully.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to see, as a lawyer, and I know you as a financial advisor, you don't want to see clients making decisions that are not in their best interest, and I would see it sometimes in personal injury cases, like, oh, you don't want to do that. And yet it's ultimately the client's choice,
Mhm.
but you want to be able to at least give them the best knowledge that they can have, and then they will make the choice.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And a lot of
Yeah.
what we do is just, so much is focused on today. Like a lot of times people are looking at a balance sheet or they're looking like a moment in time. But we
Mhm.
look well beyond that moment in time and look at, okay, not only what does that mean for you today, but let's say you're going to stay there 10 years out. What does that mean? Right. And really looking at the projections going forward, because that's where the big miss was. What I was seeing when I was with that old company was that, okay, yeah, maybe they could have afforded it in that moment, but what happens when child support goes away? What happens when spousal support goes away, right? This
Ex-
is a very different financial picture now, and we have to have a
Exactly.
plan in place to handle those things.
Exactly. And, it's funny you mentioned 10 years. My husband and I are in our house now 10 years this year. And it's not, a new house. It wasn't new when we moved in. But we've hit the 10-year mark. At the 10-year mark, lots of things break down. Lots of things have to be replaced. And so we knew that moving in. But when you're in, I think, the divorce arena, you're right. Your focus is so on right now and getting through now and next year. You're not thinking about what's going to happen in 10 years when I've got to replace that roof and all the appliances and this and yeah, and all of the things that you have to do to maintain a house that, as you said, you may really can't afford to stay there. So it's good to
Exactly.
have somebody to come in who's not attached to say, these are the numbers. This is
Well,
how
and the other
this is
thing
how it
that we
works.
can do that just saves people a tremendous amount of money is helping them understand tax implications of the decisions that they're making. So sometimes people are making decisions, and what do they say? Like penny wise, pound foolish,
I'm
right?
foolish.
Like
Yeah.
that might be saving them a little bit of money in the short term, but ultimately costing them a lot more than they might realize, especially when they're not considering the tax implications of their decisions.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Great points. Okay, so that's the divorce side of what you do. Now let's talk about Great Lakes Investment, because you started it, I think, about a year after Divorce Financial Solutions. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
So how did that get started? And tell us what you do in that business.
So I had been a financial advisor. I'd been an equity research analyst before that. So I'd been in the investment world for a long time before I started the divorce business. And what I quickly found was that many of our divorcing clients would come through their divorce with us, and then they would want that ongoing financial planning and investment management support. And so that's why I established the business. Now that business has evolved all on its own, and we support all kinds of folks. So yes, certainly people coming through their divorce, we definitely will provide ongoing support if that's what they're looking for. But many of our attorney clients have become clients on the investment management side as well. And we do a lot of coaching for new business owners and those who are transitioning either into or out of a business. So we work with folks in a lot of different ways under that umbrella. But generally, it's either financial coaching or planning as well as portfolio management.
Okay, so let's talk about the financial coaching, because I know I get a lot of questions about. Sometimes I get a lot of questions about the financial part, which is great. Sometimes I'm clearly not getting enough questions, and it's because they're just aspects of running a business that clients haven't even considered. So can you tell us, like, are the common mistakes that you see business owners and lawyers? You're business owners, you've got solo practice, you've got a small firm. So what are some of the common financial mistakes, Leah, that you see lawyers and other entrepreneurs making, and how can you help them with that?
So this is a great question, and I see all kinds of things, Sharon, and I want to be clear. That is why when I have people share my bio, my background information, I let them know I have had some difficult financial times in my life, and I let them know very clearly and upfront. And the reason being is a lot of times people have really struggled with finances for a long time before they will reach out to a coach to ask for support. There's a lot of shame that people come with. A lot of times people are telling me, I know I should have done this. I should have done this. I should have known better, whatever it is. And they let it go on for a long time. And for some people who have really let it go on for a long time, they have created a very challenging financial mess that we have to unwind and get out of, right? Now, most people don't let it go that far, but there's lots of common things that I see people doing. I would say the most common for a new business owner is not clearly separating business and personal finances. And so sometimes it's a matter of going back through and separating and cleaning that all up. But that is definitely the most common. And it makes it very hard to make good business decisions when you don't have clarity around money coming in and money going out. And so just as simple as making sure that you have money just going through a business bank account, if you have to maintain a trust account, make sure that you are having a system set up so that way that you can do that and clearly keep the accounting records for that. That's going to be really important. Sometimes that's a mess that needs to get untangled. But from the start. So treat your business as a business from the very beginning. So if you're brand new, you do want to get started with a business bank account as soon as possible. And even if you haven't done everything you need to do to establish a business bank account specifically, do a separate personal account, at least at the beginning. So that way, again, everything is very separated and very clear.
Yeah. Now, I think most lawyers are pretty good about that. I mean, because we know that.
Oh, Sharon, you'd be surprised.
Maybe. I like to believe we are. But we certainly know, or should know, that there's got to be an escrow or client funds account. That's what my bank calls it. But that is very different from your operating account and your savings account. And I know some lawyers who they will have the operating account for the business expenses, savings, because you put the extra in there and use it as you need it. A separate account for taxes, and then their escrow account, which, I think is the way to go. But let's assume now, you're working with Sally and she's a lawyer and she's figured that out. So she's got her account set up and they're separate. Her personal accounts are, at a different bank. She's not even going to mix the banks. Okay. She's good at that.
I love that even more.
They're just completely separate. Okay. So once you get there, what else are you seeing in the
so one of the big things is not having some clarity around your expenses. So you really want clarity around what are your fixed expenses every month and what are your variable expenses. When you're early on in business, you want to keep those fixed expenses as low as you can, because that gives you some flexibility. If you have a weaker revenue month, you're not worried about, paying the bills, right? So getting very clear on what am I committing to financially every month? And is that in alignment with my revenue expectations, right? So if you're just ramping up, you might be investing heavily in your business, but you want to have a plan in place to hit the revenue goals that are ultimately going to not only cover your expenses, but pay you and profit as well, right? And so a lot of times when people are early on, they're committing to these fixed expenses, maybe a beautiful office that might be a little premature, a lot of different things that I see. Sometimes people are getting help maybe sooner than they might need it, which is okay, again, as long as you have a plan in place to bring the money in to cover those things. But a lot of times people are making financial commitments early on that are a little premature.
Yeah, sometimes, what I see is the decisions are made on okay, I want to get this for the business. How much money do we have in the bank?
Right.
Now, yeah, which without enough, as you said, without enough clarity about, well, this is how much we have today. What are the expenses coming up, and what's coming in that you can reasonably predict? And with some practices, it's a little easier than others. If you bill on an hourly rate or flat fees, and you know what your percentage of collections are, and you know what your cases are, that can be a bit of an easier prediction than with contingent fees. But you have to be good if your legal practice is personal injury and it's all contingent fee. You've got to learn how to be really good at assessing cases, at assessing the value, and then looking at, okay, what kind of court schedule are we on, and when are we likely to see any revenue from this case?
Exactly. And then when you are making those expense commitments, not doing it based on that last big lump sum that you received, right? Because sometimes, depending on your relationship with money and kind of how you handle your expenses, sometimes people get that big payday and then all of a sudden it's like the money's gone tomorrow, right? But if you have that very, fluctuating income, to make sure that that's going to last you until the next one, right? And really getting a plan in place. And that comes back to keeping those fixed expenses low. So that way you would already have all of that money committed when it's, just coming in the door.
Yeah, it's, when I was setting out on my own, I had someone, this is the best advice I think I could have received, say to me, control your overhead.
Mhm.
Control your overhead, control your overhead. And it's so true, because getting out from under those commitments that you've made can be very, very difficult. The other thing I see is, and I understand this, I made this mistake for sure. You have a business issue. I need more clients. And along comes this, we'll get you great clients.com service. And for a fairly significant amount of money every month, they're going to send you qualified leads. Now, this is my pet peeve, because I've done this both as a solo practitioner and in a small practice, and it never panned out, ever. And yet, what was the impetus to say, okay, I'll sign up? The impetus was sort of that feeling of franticness, saying, oh my gosh, I need clients now. And you tell me you're going to send me clients now. Okay, I'm in. Get me some clients, because I'm frantic. So how do you deal with that? Because then you look back and go, I have spent all this money on this service that brought me nothing. And why did I do that? It was a terrible mistake.
So I would absolutely evaluate any of those things that you might be doing on a regular basis. So not just throwing money after, the problem, but if that is something that you are already utilizing, look and realistically see where are the clients coming from and what are the margins on those particular clients. So if you're paying a huge fee for, marketing, then that profit margin is dropping on that client very quickly, right? Whereas if you're getting a referral from somebody you went to school with, you're not paying anything for that. All of a sudden, you have a much higher margin on that particular case, right? So really looking at where are your clients coming from, and evaluating that's going to help you determine where to spend your time, money, energy. And a lot of times it's not going to be money that you need to spend. It is going to be building relationships, that networking that doesn't necessarily, you might be involved in an organization that has a cost associated with it, but generally speaking, it's not going to cost much to build those relationships.
Right. Exactly. And but that takes time. And I think as a business owner, you have to understand you've got to put that time in to build those relationships. I look at it
as an investment in your business,
exactly,
just like as if you were spending money, but the return on that investment you will get for years and years and years, where those marketing dollars for some of those services are very short-lived.
Correct. I've had people that I've talked to and that I've worked with really feel overwhelmed by their inability to really read and understand the financial statements, to know how to budget. How do I set up a budget? How do I evaluate my results? Do you get involved in any of that? And what would you recommend to somebody that's brand new and says, I've never done this. I've never set up a business budget. I don't know how to read these financial statements. I'm really not sure what I'm doing.
So for our business financial coaching program, that's exactly what we do. We help you build your business budget. We help you to create a forecast for your business. And we help you to look at, if you are using an accountant, the statements that they're providing to you. If you're using a bookkeeping software, help you to learn how to pull statements from the bookkeeping software that you might be using. So it just kind of depends on what your current setup is. We might make a recommendation to you based on what we're seeing. So for example, if your books are a mess and it's not your cup of tea, I might recommend you really need to use a bookkeeper if you're not going to be keeping track of this, right? Depending on what your accounting needs are, there's different kinds of accountants that specialize in different areas. You might not be working with one that is supporting your business in the way that you need, and you might need to make a transition or change the service that you are contracted for. So a lot of that is what we do in the coaching program, essentially to help you set yourself up for success going forward. So sometimes that might be working with other financial professionals. But the other thing is we really look at not just the business, but how does the business support your life? Because we work with both business and personal financial planning. It's not just about, how much are you investing in the business, but what does that actually mean for you and your family? Is it the right amount for you to reach your long-term goals?
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. And I can't emphasize enough how much I agree with the hire a bookkeeper. You're a lawyer. And maybe, I have a friend who is an accountant and a lawyer. And so she knows her books. But for most of us, the rest of us, you're a lawyer, the law side, upside down, inside out, backwards and forwards. But, when I looked at those financial statements, and it's like, are you kidding? Are you kidding? Well, I'm supposed to understand this, much less keep track of it. Because I knew that was going to get all messed up. And then my accountant was going to be looking at me like, well, where are the books? Where's the numbers? Where's the, I need it. So yeah, what a great recommendation.
And those statements really are useful in making business decisions. So if you're not understanding the statements, then it's just a matter of getting educated on them. Everybody is absolutely capable of understanding. If you never took an accounting class, I wouldn't open up a legal book and assume that I'm going to understand everything about the law, right? But when you sit down with somebody and really work through those reports with them, now some of you might be able to do that directly with your accountant, and that is fantastic. If you have that relationship and they will sit down and educate you on that, that's great. But what I hear from a lot of clients is that's not the kind of relationship they have with their accountant, and they really need some support in doing that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know once I finally understood it, and then, my bookkeeper prepares the reports every month, and I'd sit and go, "Ooh, look at that. Let's look at where's the profit now. Let's compare it to last year." But it was great because I had all of the data, the long-term data that I needed and wanted, because I could go back as many years as I wanted to look at where were we, where have we come, where can I tweak, right? What's working, what's not working, et cetera. So that's once you learn it, it can be a source of great pleasure when you start looking at those numbers.
Well, and peace of mind. So a lot of times your bookkeepers, your accountants or depends on what your service offering is. I see the service offering evolving a little bit, but a lot of them are not providing cash flow projections. And for me as a business owner, those cash flow projections are key to knowing what I can and can't do, really. What can I afford? And if you don't have a system in place to have that captured on a regular basis, you really are handicapping yourself, right? And so getting that in place, whether it is with an accountant or working with a coach to help you set that up, is really going to give you a lot of peace of mind if you are worried about the money coming in and going out.
Wonderful. So I put up your email because I know people that are listening are saying to themselves, "Oh, gee, I need to this is what I need. I need to get in touch with this lady. So I did put up your email, Leah, but is there any other way people can get in touch with you or find out more about your services?
Absolutely. So if you go to GreatLakesInvestment.com, you can actually schedule a complimentary introductory call right on the website. So it'll pull my schedule up and you can schedule an intro call with me. That's over Zoom. And it's a good opportunity for us to talk about what your concerns are, what your priorities are. And I will very clearly let you know if that is an area that I can support you with, or if there's somebody else that I would recommend that you talk to.
Okay, terrific. Let me put that up. GreatLakesInvestment.com, right? Schedule the call with Leah, and yeah, and that's great, because I think it's just as important when we talk to clients, whether we're lawyers, whether we're financial advisors, whatever our professional work is. If we're not a good fit, if we can tell we're not a good fit, it doesn't make sense to ever take that client on, take that case on, but always give the referral to someone else or to another organization where you can go check things out. So
exactly. And that is also why it's such a great idea for attorneys to network with one another, because a lot of times they are going to get inquiries that aren't the right fit for them.
Correct. Yeah. So, well, Leah, you are a wealth of information. This has been terrific. I have really enjoyed this. I know our listeners have. And as I said to people, go to GreatLakesInvestment.com, schedule a call with Leah if you have questions, if you think she can help you, and find out what services she has and what she can do to help your law firm move forward much smoothly. Because you're right, the financial side of things can keep you tied in knots, can keep you up at night after night after night, worrying about, how am I going to pay these bills? How am I going to make payroll? How? And yet, if you can take that stress off because you have a plan, that's how you can move forward. And that's how you're not making decisions out of stark terror that you're not going to be able to pay your bills.
Exactly.
Yeah. So go to GreatLakesInvestment.com, schedule that call.
Thank you so much, Sharon.
Oh, my pleasure. And listen, for everybody that's listening, if you are not following me on LinkedIn, please ask you to do that. Look up Sharon Christie and Bold Women Lawyers. Either one will get you to me. I'm also on Facebook, and you can check out my YouTube channel too. So please follow me, because that's how you're going to hear all the information about all these great guests that we have. Thank you, Leah. And I hope everybody that's listening have a great rest of your day.